Hi everyone, it's Nick. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. Okay, in this video today, we're going to be talking about exterior design mistakes that are making your home look cheap. We're talking curb appeal, okay? What are the things that matter to make your home look really beautiful and wonderful and amazing to the surrounding community so they can be jealous of how amazing your house looks, right? Because if you're making these mistakes here, then your house will look a little bit cheap. Now, first of all, of course, if you're easily offended by people on the internet, anonymous guys on the internet that you've never heard critiquing your home, I don't know you, I've never been to your house, okay? Stop caring about what other people think, okay? Like if you don't like what I have to say, don't take offense. It doesn't matter. I don't know your home, so you can do what you want. If you love it, you live in it, it's all good. But if you're looking for an anonymous friend on the internet who's giving you some advice on mistakes to avoid, then listen on, my friends. So exterior mistakes can sometimes feel really daunting because they're permanent. Like you can't really just like scoot over a driveway if you don't like where it landed, which is why if you're doing a new build, whether it's external or you're doing interior, I personally would recommend that you make sure that you have the right software that you can make these changes early on in the process. And that's why I want to thank today's sponsor, which is Rayon Design. So Rayon Design is the next generation CAD software that is used by architects and some of the best interior designers in the world. It doesn't require sort of a super fancy computer to use. It's really easy to get started. It streamlines the entire workflow from schematic design to detailed documentation. Designers can access a built-in library of over 10,000 CAD blocks to map out hardscaping, planting zones, material changes instantly. And it even features its own sidekick directly in the design flow, allowing it to generate custom blocks or textures in seconds. It combines technical precision with visual storytelling in a single platform. And because it's web-based, it's really easy to collaborate with the client or with contractors to be able to make sure that your designs are exactly as they need to be. Rayon Design is the all-in-one, effortless tool that helps you go from design concept all the way to a finished project. I've put a link in the description for you to get started on Rayon Design for free. Go ahead, you click on the description, you can get started really quickly. Now, thank you, Rayon Design, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to those exterior design mistakes. Okay, first mistake that I see in the front yard and the backyard is just gonna be boring pathways, like really just boring paths. I personally believe that most people, you're just going for the path of least resistance and you're going down to Home Depot and you're buying those same old boring old pavers, right? Those square or rectangle pavers that are really big, oversized, not scaled at all to the human foot, and instead just creating a linear path from the sidewalk to your front door. And I just don't think that that really tells a story. I think that you want to tell a little bit of a story in terms of, how to get to your home and just kind of, give opportunities to add a little whimsy. Remember whimsy, right? You know what I mean? Like having a little bit of fun and having some little florals, which we'll get to all in a second. And like just little storytelling that kind of makes a path feel a lot more interesting. So don't be afraid to do something a little bit curved, to do something that kind of takes up a little bit more of the yard rather than just that, path of least resistance that we were talking about, right? I think it just adds a whole lot more interest to your space. It feels a lot more fun. I'm not saying go on a meandering sort of, maze in your own front yard. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? But I am talking about not being afraid to be a little bit curved and have a little bit of fun. And also I will say the materials, rather than those boring old pavers, things like wood, things like stone, things like concrete, things like brick, these things, especially on a smaller scale, I think make a much, that's again, scaled to the human foot, I think really does feel a lot more tailored and interesting, and also just creates opportunity for pattern play and just makes a much more interesting visual path for you to get to your home. Same applies with the backyard. I actually think generally speaking, the backyard, you have a little bit more room to have a little bit of fun because there's more room to kind of play, and theoretically, if you're doing some of the tips we're going to talk about in a minute, there's more of an opportunity to kind of tell that story a little bit more than the front path where you might just want to go from A to B. Lots more room to play back there with something that just feels a little bit more elegant and a little bit more of fun rather than just going straight from, the backyard to the garage or to the back alley or whatever you're doing. Have a little bit more fun, tell a little bit more of a story. I believe in you. Okay, next up, I'm gonna say is too many materials. I've gone off on this one before, but here's what you get, okay? With some exceptions, of course, as I said at the beginning, the disclaimer at the beginning, do what you want, I don't really care. But I do think that it's helpful to think of the exterior similarly to how we look at interiors. Again, I'm not an architect, I'm not a landscape architect, but I feel free to play one on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like I'm just here to just give my own thoughts. But I would say that limit the material palette to like maybe 3. Like again, you've got your primary. Okay, so what's your wood siding, basically, right? Are you doing wood siding? Are you painting it? Like, are you doing like, whatever, are you doing stucco? Like, I don't know what you're into, but like, pick your primary, okay, material that you're putting on the exterior, and then do a secondary, which could be your window trim, could be your front door garage, you know, maybe the door is the same material, right? You've got kind of your secondary, and then you've got your accents. So your accent can be like your lighting fixtures, the little pathways that we talked about. Remember we talked about interesting pathways, lighting up those interesting pathways in a beautiful way, right? Those are really fun. You know, your little door hard knocker, your little whatever, your entrance pole, like all that stuff. So maybe like they're really interesting choices, but again, those offer just an opportunity to have a little bit more fun and a bit more play, because you're probably not going to choose like solid bronze for your exterior siding. You're probably going to go with something like a hardy panel or plank or something, or you're going to choose like a wood or, you know, a painted or whatever you want to do. And again, your secondary, you're probably going to go with a metal choice, something that feels a little bit more practical but used a little bit less than your primary. And then of course your accent is where you play, and that's when you have a little bit more fun. And I just think that works really well. On the house that I'm going to be building, of course the house build series is coming soon because I am building a house this year. I am doing like wood siding on the front, I'm doing like a bronze material on the windows and the door, and then I've got some accents coming, which is probably going to be like a travertine, and that's it. But some of you are doing way too much. Some of you are putting on stucco, and then we've got brick, and then we've got stone veneer, and then we've got different colored shingles, and then we've got wood on the side, and then we've painted something else a different color, and then we've got a completely different thing on the window trim. And then some of you are like, I want the black windows and I want the white over here because I want the modern farmhouse look and the blah blah blah. And before you know it, you got like 12 different materials in your house, and it looks absolutely redonkadonk. So I would personally say stick to like 3. That's a bit strict, I'll be honest with you, but like that's me, because I just think like houses just in general look better when there's less materials on them. But some of you are doing way too much, and it looks a little bit ridiculous. Just because you have like a random stone pillar doesn't mean you need to like dress it up in a completely different stone veneer that's used nowhere else on the rest of the house. Treat it like you do the rest of your own home. Make sure it's cohesive and it's all working together, and that means coming up with a plan and a material palette, and not just chucking everything on the house and hoping for the best. I'm going to say next mistake that's making your home look cheap is going to be just relying solely on grass, right? Just sticking with grass as your only way to landscape your home. Again, like I said, I'm not a landscaper, okay? I don't even know how to keep a tree or an indoor plant alive. So I am the least qualified person. Hasn't stopped me before, as you all know on this channel, but I will say that I do strongly believe that plain old grass lawns that do nothing else but be a plain grass, whatever, is just boring. It's just boring, and it's not interesting, and there's no thought. There's no thought, there's no interest. Now, let's be real, there's a lot of people out there that just hate on grass in general, and I get it. Like these massive lawns in the suburbs that go on forever, probably not a great use of our resources and blah, 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 and water usage, and we should probably do it for more interesting things like, I don't know, growing food or something, but whatever, that's a whole different other story. But I would still say from an aesthetic point of view and like the experience and a design perspective, so not just talking about, you know, access to healthy food, I would say that people just rely way too much on grass, and they just stick with grass, and there's lots of other things you can do. You can do stone, you can do different plants, you can do trees, right? I think all that stuff is a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. Now, personally, I would also be really careful about trees, because just make sure that you're checking with, obviously if you've got like an HOA, or what we say in Canada, we call a strata, like if you've got all those different things, you know, you got to be careful when it comes to any of the conversations on external, and I'm not here to start a fight or a war with your HOA, because that sounds like hell. I'll leave that to you. But even your city, like even your municipality might have rules around all this stuff that you need to be careful of. For example, here in Vancouver where I live, if you start planting trees in your home, that's great. You can plant them in your backyard. That's fun. But when you go to get rid of them, the city's like, oh no, like if you're going to get rid of a tree, you got to put a tree back. And so you got to be really careful with some of this stuff. But I would say grass is usually fairly safe, I will be honest. But within the restrictions of your city or your HOA or your strata, whatever, I do think it's important to bring in different things rather than just relying solely on grass, right? So we've talked about bricks. We've talked about like different areas that you can have for entertaining, for gathering. You know, that's really a wonderful thing in your backyard. Trees providing a little, they provide shade. Not only are they beautiful, and they provide some sort of verticality to the otherwise very flat as a pancake grass lawn that you see everywhere. So you're now getting some vertical interest, which is really nice and aesthetically pleasing. Again, in the summertime, they offer shade opportunities, which is what makes trees one of the reasons that they're also amazing. So there's lots of really cool things that you can do in your backyard that is not just relying solely on grass. These soulless grass panels that go on forever and ever and ever, especially in the suburbs, are really boring and in my opinion quite cheap. I think at one point in time, time, having a giant luxurious lawn was seen as like, you know, really expensive and sort of kind of a luxury, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think now it's about creating interest, and that means creating a more interesting experience in your front and backyard, and that ain't just plain old grass. Okay, next mistake I'm gonna say is gonna be a really boring front door. Now, I wanna caution that I don't think you necessarily, please see my point about extra materials, I don't think you need to go super duper crazy with your front door, but I do think that there is an opportunity here to integrate the front door into the rest of the design. So depending on what kind of style you're looking for in your architecture or you have in your architecture, I do think you should tailor the front door to do something really interesting. But it really is where you get that first impression when you walk into a home. So I think it should really be thought through. So whether that means the door hardware or perhaps any decorative objects that you have around it or on the door or whatever, I think that's beautiful. You can paint it an interesting color. I think that's really wonderful. Again, I would rein in the materials and the color choices that you have for the home personally, but I do think that there is plenty of opportunity to have a little bit more fun. The stock entrance door that you've seen with a really, really boring door handle, it's just not very fun. It's not really interesting. And like I said, if you want to do something a little bit more interesting and a little bit more special that is going to make your place not only, it's just going to be more livable and interesting and fun to be in, because let's be honest, as humans, we love going to beautiful, fun places. That's why design does matter. And sometimes the boring, flat, plain old Home Depot door is just not nearly as fun as if you do something with some color to it, or something in, you know, a panel and an interesting material, or maybe you've got some cool hardware. Like if you're stuck with a boring door, changing out that hardware to be a more interesting entrance pull is a really great idea. And again, if you can integrate that with some of your other pieces that are happening, your exterior lighting, or of course tie that into your interior and your exterior so that when you step through the door, it matches the experience indoors and outdoors. I do think that makes a massive difference to create a space that feels a lot more interesting. Your guests will notice, I guarantee you will notice, and it will just improve the quality of your life, because you're going to enjoy coming home and you're going to see, you know, going through that front door and experience that is going to be fun for you. Because I think in the end, that's what makes beautiful things worth having, is because you get to love it and experience it every day. Okay, next up on my list is going to be not having any zones. This is specifically most likely going to be your backyard. It can be your front yard as well. It's just that depending on where you live, right? Like if, you know, in some places that you don't have really a backyard, and so a front yard is, you know, all you really have, and that could be like your connection to the city and community and all that sort of stuff. So, but I do think having the backyard specifically I'm talking about, it's important to have zones. So if you have and are fortunate and blessed enough to have a larger backyard, then I think it's worth separating out different zones in your backyard in a similar way to what you do on the interior of your home. So if you have a living area, if you have a place that you plan on doing entertaining, make that a space, right? And try to section it off. You can use plants, you can use bricks, you can use like your material that you're using, you can use grass, yes, of course, and you can use hedges, you can do all sorts of things to sort of section out and create what I would call essentially a living room, but for your backyard. Kitchen, right? You outdoor kitchens, especially I'm looking at you Americans, because you guys love to put a barbecue and a smoker, and like you've got like prep tables and ice machines and beer whatevers, like beer taps, and you've got lots of stuff back there. So I know you've basically got, I think some of you have more in your outdoor kitchen than you do in your indoor kitchen. And if you have warm weather for a lot of the year, then you might actually get more use out of the outdoor kitchen, to be honest. In which case, I'm not a massive fan of these massive outdoor kitchens necessarily, but that's easy for me to say because I live in Canada, but you might feel differently. In which case, great, cool. If you love it, then I would just still consider sectioning it off, right? Create a space that feels like a kitchen. It's separate from the rest of the area. You know, you're not gonna create a bathroom outdoors, most likely, unless you have like a spa area, maybe. Like you've got an outdoor shower, or that's a bit specialized for most people. But you could have a sauna back there. You know, in places in Northern Europe, in Scandinavian countries, a sauna is a massive part of people's homes and their experience and culture and all the rest of it. So that could be a zone, right? Your garage where you keep all your tools and things, that's a zone. Maybe a play area if you have kids. I don't know, I don't really care for children. And I do find that the outdoor play sets are a little out of hand and out of control. I'm not gonna lie to you. And those trampolines are death traps, I'm just telling you. But you do you. Maybe you have a pool area. Maybe you have a pool area or a hot tub area. Point is, I don't know your home, but I do know that there's lots of spaces out there, and it's important to create zones around them, similar to what you would do indoors, right? Don't just have this blank canvas and have everything running into each other. It doesn't create for a really nice experience. And I think using those vertical elements we talked about, hedges, trees, things like that, flower beds, those things can create physical separation between your zones, which is going to be far more comfortable and a way better living experience and a much nicer way to experience all those different areas. So you're not like, it's not just so grand and open that it just feels a little like the whole place is an open concept. Zone it out. Even if it doesn't have necessarily a lot of vertical area, still you want to section your outdoor seating so that it's all surrounding maybe a fire pit or something like that, just to create a little bit of a zone. It creates more of an experience and you're going to be happier for it. Okay, next, exterior feature that is making your home look cheap is going to have to be ugly fences. Okay, so I've mentioned a thing or two, I don't love the glass railings that every Los Angeles mega mansion has because I just think they're cheap and gaudy, but there are beautiful fences out there that are not that. But just in general, if you have a rundown, gross fence, it doesn't create a great, amazing, beautiful yard area, in my opinion. It really takes down the exterior experience. And that's because I think a lot of people out there are looking at fences strictly as a functional benefit rather than necessarily aesthetics. So functional, I mean, it's what is it doing? It's dividing your property line. If you hate your neighbors, you don't have to look at them every day, which is nice. So they're obviously great for privacy. That is a really great functional benefit to having fences for sure. And that's why fences can be a wonderful, great thing, right? You can separate, if you've got a dog, maybe you don't want your dog to run away or you don't want other people's dogs to run in your backyard, right? All those things are great. I don't know why you don't want your neighbor's dog to come into your yard. I would love that personally because I love dogs more than people, but you do you. Maybe it's an angry dog. I don't know. Keeping animals out maybe. I don't know where you live, right? So you got lots of reasons why fences functionally make sense, but don't sleep on the aesthetics. I think some people really spend a lot of time really focusing on a beautiful backyard and they put God knows how much money into an expensive outdoor kitchen, but then they go, oh yeah, fence. We'll just go down and put a plain old boring fence. There's two reasons why I think this matters aesthetically. First is I do think it needs to be cohesive with the rest of the backyard. So take a look at what's happening on the exterior of the home, right? What kind of materials are you using on the home? Can you use some of those materials or at least those colors and use them and bring them into the fence area? I think it makes a huge difference, right? Incorporates it into the design. The second is the fence. It's kind of like the walls of your backyard, right? It's providing a visual sort of vertical backdrop for the rest of the space. So whether you like it or not, the fence is providing that. It's where your eye, when you're looking out into your backyard or your front yard, it's what's hitting your eye. It's what's hitting your eye before you get to off of your property. So it's always going to provide that interesting sort of backdrop for the rest of your space. If it's old and ratty and unpainted, it's not doing you any favors. It doesn't matter how well you landscape the backyard. If you have a gross, nasty fence that's falling apart, it's just not going to make a huge wow factor, in my opinion. So it always makes a place look cheap. Plus, if we're talking about exterior kind of curb appeal, I think it's worth mentioning that your neighbors and other people in your community are probably going to be spending a lot of time looking at the outside of your fence. So don't forget that either, right? If you care about that, then I would also encourage you to upgrade your fence and do something a little bit more interesting and tailored and incorporated into the rest of this design so that it feels like you're using similar materials, similar colors, what have you, similar design. Obviously if you have an incredibly contemporary house, then maybe it might not be such a great idea to just go down to Home Depot and get the plain old sort of fence that other people would use, which might make more sense in a farmhouse design or a craftsman design or something a little bit more traditional, right? So using something a little bit more modern, maybe in a metal or something, so it's a different material, but it's better incorporated into the rest of the design for the architecture of the whole home. So I think that makes a huge difference, both for your neighbors and also for you experiencing it in your actual home. Okay, so that's it for me today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm gonna link here to my video on 6 things I would never do to my own home because I talked a little bit about that color palette and the material palette for the exterior. So I talked about that in that video. So if you enjoyed that section, you might enjoy that whole video. So go check that one out and I will see you all in the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.